Hello YouTubers, fellow do-it-yourselfers and stove enthusiasts and rednecks like myself. I decided to make a video about my Vogelzang barrel stove kit and all of the upgrades I've done for it over time and all of the things that I have discovered. And I think this will be a great help to those of you who are interested in making a barrel stove. You can really cut a lot of the fat or the dead wood out of the problems in the designed kit. So I'd like to get some feedback from whoever watches the video, whether you like the design or if you hate it. It's all good. Maybe I can get some ideas from the rest of you. So since I had to buy two Vogelzang kits, I had two collars, pipe collars. I decided, since I'm pretty lazy, I don't like shoveling ash out of a stove. I figured, why not install the second collar on the bottom, put a cap on it, and you can buy these caps at the hardware store. And I attached a piece of metal. I think this is a portion of a Dish Network dish and a steel tensioning rod. So when I want to empty the ash, I will take this pusher device I assembled, hit it here after I take the rod off, and the cap falls down here. Then I open the door to the stove and simply push the ash out. The ash does puff up a little bit into the air, but not that much, and it doesn't bother me. After I've cleaned all the ash out, put the plug back on and the tensioner, take this out and dump it. And that's worked out really well for me. I don't have to reach into the stove and try and shovel the ash out while reaching way in and getting my clothing dirty and hurting my back because I don't have a good back. This is a very easy way to empty the ash, and I'm sure other people have thought of it, but in case you haven't, it's a great addition to the barrel stove and a great way to clean ash out without much effort at all. Had I to do it differently, I would have used fiberglass cloth, as there is some rusting around where the collar meets the bottom of the stove. And I would have reversed the bolts so that the threaded area of the bolts don't stick up into the bottom of the stove and make it hard for me to rake the ash. Oh well, it's always 2 or 3 or 4 times to get everything the way you want it. A word about the collar. The kit comes with a damper with a handle that you turn to slow the exhaust down. I couldn't use it. It causes the stove to puff smoke back into the room. I eventually cut it out. And I think anyone that's serious about doing this needs to cut that piece out of the inside of the collar, because you can control your draft from the front of the stove 100%. And I found that the damper control was a worse than useless feature. Also wanted to mention that since I had 2 kits, I had 4 feet for the stove. So I bolted them back to back. They are thicker and look great. Oh, by the way, the kit is designed to bolt the stove to the feet. I couldn't get that to work. The reason I couldn't get that to work is I could never, ever get the stove to sit flat. It would always have an 1/8 of an inch, a 64th of an inch, where one of the feet would be up off the floor. Finally, I realized you don't have to bolt the stove to the feet. It sits there perfectly and flat. All I had to do was bolt these feet to cement blocks. And what you do is you drill down through the block with a masonry bit, cram the hole full of pieces of nylon zip tie, then you can screw down with sheetrock screws and get a very strong, tight fit. I never considered using the feet as they were. They're so short, and the stove ends up being so close to the floor, you've practically got to lay on the floor to load it. Which I was never going to do. So I got the stove raised up, and yes, high. And that way I can empty my ashes and load the stove without groveling. A few words about the air inlet I designed. I've noticed that on most stoves, including the Vogelzang kit, there is some sort of air inlet which allows air to go directly into the stove. And I've noticed on other stoves, anytime you have a design where air can go directly into the firebox, it allows the fire to try to gulp air. And it results in a phenomenon called I don't know what you call it, a chugging sound, where the fire will try to gulp, and it results in smoke being puffed back out into the room. I had a major problem with that the first few designs of these barrel stoves that I've tried. I eventually fixed it. What I realized, and you can see these 3 bolts here. Now the stove is running and it's very hot, and I'm not going to open it right now. On the inside, I put a round piece of steel, about 5 inches in diameter, that sits back from the front of the stove a couple inches. So what I've done is force the air to go straight in and then change direction as it bumps against that plate. So the air goes up, it goes to the side, it doesn't go straight into the fire. And that was the complete permanent solution to the back puffing problem. So you've got to force the air to change direction. Now I can put a cardboard box in this thing, which is the best possible fuel for getting the fire to chug and punch smoke back out into the room, and it still won't do it. That's how effective this idea has been. So it's just 3 pieces of threaded rod and a steel plate about the size of this that sits in there about 2 inches back from the front of the stove, forcing the air to go in and change direction and meet the fire at a lower speed. And that is another critical part of making this a successful stove. Well, because YouTube only allows videos that are 15 minutes long maximum, I made this into 2 segments. So this is the end of part 1, and I hope part 2 will be as interesting, at least to me,